everybody, and welcome to another brand new edition of T Watches a Scary Movie. My name is T, and of course, we are talking some scary movies. I appreciate everybody taking the time to join us tonight to catch another new episode. As I've mentioned, y'all, we're going to get back to video episodes sooner than later. My plan is next week. It's looking like next week I'm going to be able to get back to video for y'all if everything goes to plan. I appreciate you though listening to these audio episodes. I know that just like a podcast, it's kind of easier sometimes because you can kind of do anything you want to go and do and still have this on in the background as well. But if you want to make sure you're getting all the good information about when we have our new episodes going up, and making sure you're getting all the alerts for when that's definitely going to be happening, then you have got to subscribe to the YouTube page. Yes, right here at the YouTube page is where we put up all of our new episodes, and you're going to want to make sure that you get subscribed to it in order to get the alerts of when new episodes are going up. And that address is youtube.com/Theron Reynolds Scary Movie. Again, youtube.com/Theron Reynolds Scary Movie. Get subscribed to our YouTube page, and again, you will get all of the alerts for when our new episodes are being uploaded and going live. Any other kind of videos that I choose to put up as well, too. I've done some unboxings and some food challenges and stuff like that before. Also, if you want to get the alerts for when our for when our watch parties are going down, you got to get subscribed to our Facebook group, which is facebook.com/group/T Scary Movie. Again, facebook.com/group/T Scary Movie. Get subscribed to that, and that will let you know when we have our watch parties going on. We got a watch party coming tonight after this new episode goes up. We're actually going to do our scary TV watch party because that's what we're talking tonight. Yes, we have been doing these watch parties for months now, and y'all have given me the greatest honor of joining me to watch some awesome TV shows. When we first started out, I was doing like episodes of Buffy and Angel, and I did that, I think, on Saturdays for the longest time. Then we we started at Sundays. Then we moved over to Saturdays, and a few of y'all would join every now and then. But once we started adding in more movies, and then we diversified the lineup a little bit, as more and more of y'all came. It's always a great time. We always have so much fun with it. So make sure you're tuning in to the Facebook group after this new episode so you can get the link for where we're doing our watch party tonight. It's going to be a bit of an abbreviated version compared to what we usually put up. But, man, the week has gone by and we're already ready here to talk some more new stuff with you. And I kept trying to think about what I wanted to talk about for this episode, because I have been watching a lot of movies and stuff like that lately, but I was just really, really waiting to see exactly what I wanted to talk to y'all about. And I decided that I haven't really talked about a lot of these TV shows yet that we've been reviewing or anything like that. So now was the time to get that done. So I wanted to talk here about our TV lineup. And we're going to start things off with Hannibal. Yeah, the Silence of the Lambs Hannibal Lecter adaptation that made it to TV on NBC just a few years ago. Now, if you've never joined our watch party before, and if for any reason you did not catch Hannibal when it was actually on TV, again, Hannibal was on NBC, and it ran for 3 seasons between 2013 and 2015. So it's not that old. The show was created by Brian Fuller, and if you don't recognize that name, I feel sorry for you because Brian Fuller has put together some of the best shows we've had on TV in the last couple of decades. Matter of fact, another show of his that he did called Dead Like Me that we've actually played in our watch party before. We've done a couple episodes of that about a girl who gets killed and then is reincarnated as a Grim Reaper going around to collect the souls of folks getting set to die on Earth. Dead Like Me is absolutely one of my hands down favorite TV shows of all time. And when I found out that Brian Fuller was developing a Hannibal series, he works a lot around death. I mean, between Dead Like Me and Pushing Daisies, Brian Fuller does really, really good with death. And I didn't know what to expect, only because there's some roles and some concepts that we automatically link to a specific actor or creator or something like that. And when they're not involved, we kind of get worried. And obviously, since the early 90s, Hannibal Lecter has been Anthony Hopkins. Yes, I know Brian Cox played him in the Mindhunter movie that came out before Silence of the Lambs, but a lot of people don't really remember that film. A lot of people haven't seen that film either. It's not bad, by the way. Mindhunter is the first adaptation of the Red Dragon story, by the way. Yeah, I mean, I didn't know what to expect because we're so used to Anthony Hopkins being in the role of Hannibal Lecter, who actually just won an Oscar. Good for him. Congratulations. And a very awkward end of the Academy Awards ceremony. But none of us really knew what to expect. They've kept up making stuff in the Hannibal series for, again, the last 2 decades. Silence of the Lambs came out, and it took the longest time, but then we finally started getting sequels. You know, we had Hannibal come out, which was the direct sequel, and it was pretty much following up on what happened to Hannibal Lecter after he escaped the asylum that he was locked in, and his continued interactions with Clarice. And then they came out with the prequel, which, again, it is a book, because these are all based on a book series. And the prequel was about a different FBI agent that was working with Hannibal Lecter to solve a bunch of murders, called Red Dragon. Now, keep in mind, with Red Dragon, the focus was on Hannibal Lecter and Will Graham, okay? Thomas Harris wrote a number of novels here around Hannibal himself. Basically, Red Dragon, Hannibal Rising, which less said the better. And Red Dragon has always been my favorite film in the series. I like the character Will Graham more than Clarice, just because Clarice was still very much a rookie when she was working with Hannibal Lecter. And it's a great story. It's a fantastic story, but it didn't sit with me. I don't know. I didn't take too much from Silence of the Lambs, honestly. But Red Dragon actually really stuck with me, because I always thought that the villain of Red Dragon, and yes, I know Hannibal Lecter is always going to be basically the villain, but he's not really the villain. He actually ends up playing closer to a protagonist in most of these stories than he does the straight up antagonist. Like Silence of the Lambs, matter of fact, is probably the only story to where he's playing the straight up and even then, you know what? I have to take that back, because he does play more of an antagonist in Red Dragon than he does in Silence of the Lambs. Silence of the Lambs, he's all about protecting Clarice and helping her out and everything. And even though he ends up killing some people and escaping from the asylum, it's not really targeted, is the best way to put it, except for, Dr. Chilton at the end of that. But Red Dragon, he's like actively working against Will throughout that story, honestly. And I like that, because we're so used to Hannibal being the good guy and just assisting whoever he's working with and doing whatever to where he's falling more along the lines of good than he is bad. But you have to remember, this guy eats people. He absolutely eats people. So I was interested of where we were going with Hannibal. The Red Dragon story, both the novel and the movie, basically said that Will Graham, who is an FBI profiler, or a former FBI profiler, and Hannibal Lecter have been working together for a while, solving cases, catching murderers and stuff like that. But again, in the film Red Dragon, we're right there when he gets caught. That is the start of this tale, is that Will Graham manages to finally catch him, and that's where our story starts. Whereas the Hannibal TV show is actually focused more on the continued adventures of Lecter and Graham, about them working many cases together, catching a bunch of serial killers. And honestly, it's a great concept for the show, because for the most part, we never have to focus on one specific killer. There is, every season, there's an arc that drives the season itself with one particular serial killer for each different season. But overall, it's kind of like a killer of the week. It's like a typical procedural police show. And it works out really well. They have a great cast in Hannibal. First of all, Mads Mikkelsen. Oh, man. This guy is amazing. I know people have just been in love with him for quite a while. A lot of y'all might remember him more famously from Casino Royale, which was the Big Bond kind of reboot, basically. We got our last Brosnan film, which was Die Another Day, and the first one to come after that in 2006 was Casino Royale, setting up the beginning of James Bond, about who he was going to be. And Mads Mikkelsen played the villain of the piece, Le Chiffre, and did a good job with that. And he went on to do a lot of other stuff that were kind of smaller roles. Like he did Clash of the Titans. He did the Three Musketeers reboot. But then he started, like movie-wise at least, started doing bigger things that folks started recognizing him for. So things like Doctor Strange, the amazing Rogue One, which is a fantastic movie. Even this great film called Polar that came out as well too, where he's playing this retired hitman who's trying to save this girl. He's just done a lot of really, really good movies over the course of his career, honestly, and nobody knew what to expect because Anthony Hopkins plays up Hannibal so well. But there's such a big difference in the way that the two play the roles. Hannibal, played by Anthony Hopkins, is very much conceited, honestly. I mean, the way he played the role was that he's so full of himself, he knows everything, nobody knows more than him, and there's like a devilish delight to every word he says and every interaction that he has. Like, you're always worried that he's scheming about something, and it's hard to believe that he even really, like, cares for anyone, you know? In Silence of the Lamb and Hannibal, we're led to believe he really does care about Clarice, like, to the point to where there's a romantic portion of their relationship. But then we see something like Red Dragon, and there's not really that relationship with Will at all. Like, he kind of resents Will, which of course he would, because Will's the reason why he's in jail. And in the TV series Hannibal, to be honest, they play up a lot more of a relationship between Will Graham and Hannibal Lecter, to the point to where there are absolutely romantic overtones between the two of them. But Hannibal's also played very, very down to earth. He's smart. He knows he's smart, but he's not like reveling in the fact that he knows more than other people. Like, he's very much in that mindset that he knows more than most. He's smarter than most. And obviously, he's incredibly deadly. He's incredibly vicious, but he's not played the same way. It seems like he does have a general interest in the serial killers that they hunt together. And he does have an interest in stopping a number of them, but he also has some nefarious motives as well. Because one of the things that's present in both the movies as well as this TV show is Hannibal's sick pleasure of feeding people, like humans basically, that it's something for him having both victims and colleagues alike and even enemies feeding them actual human pieces, because he wants them to kind of be the same way that he is. And that's one of the things that the show succeeds so well in. Not only the fact that it makes all those courses that he make look so damn good. Man, those things look absolutely delicious. I have no problems admitting that at all. But in addition to that, though, they play up the tension with these other serial killers. There's more than a couple confrontations between Hannibal Lecter and these other serial killers that they come across. But then there's also a lot of this cat and mouse game going on between the FBI and Lecter, Will Graham and Lecter, these romantic relationships he have and Hannibal Lecter. There's a lot going on, and he's very more nuanced in the show than I feel he ever really was in these movies. But again, this show is pretty brutal. They don't skip on the gore. They don't skip on the violence that's in it as well. We see a lot of what he ends up doing to all these people and what these other killers end up doing in there as well too. Now, in regards to whether or not the show itself is scary, there's definitely a sense of dread to it for sure. Watching every episode, there's not really anything such as a happy episode of this show. It's a very downer of a show, which is so different because all I have to compare it to is, again, Brian Fuller's earlier work, Dead Like Me, which is very much another show about death. Just as a whole, every single aspect there could be about death out there. And yet, and still, that show was very much lighthearted, the way that they approached it all. This show is... It's just very, very much like it's like a long trek because there's so much work in it, and it's great work. Like, again, the character work in this show is absolutely fantastic. Hugh Dancy, Mads Mikkelsen, Lawrence Fishburne, and so many others bring these characters to life so well. This is an amazing show that definitely ended too soon. And I can't really talk about it a lot. If you've seen the movies, then there's not going to be a lot here that you don't know that of what's going to happen. Because again, they do end up adapting Red Dragon. They also end up adapting Hannibal as well. They go into a lot of that. So you're going to see things in there you definitely recognize. But again, because of the format of the show and them going after a different killer typically every week, we also get to see a different side of a lot of these characters too. So it's definitely worth checking out. For sure, it's worth checking out. Entire series is on Netflix. You guys have got to take a look at that. And now let's move on to Black Mirror. Now, Black Mirror is absolutely my kind of show. I've always talked about how I really enjoy anthology horror, honestly. Shows like Tales from the Crypt, Twilight Zone, Tales from the Dark Side, all those kinds of things. I love shows like that because it allows for a different voice to come in every single episode and tell a brand new series. Now, the show was created by Charlie Brooker, who most of us have probably not seen anything else he's really done prior to what's it called to Black Mirror coming out. Honestly, he's done a lot of obviously British shows, and that's a big reason why most of us haven't seen anything else he's really done. But Black Mirror came around, and the idea was it's a very close look at modern society and the unanticipated consequences of a lot of like new technologies. And that's one thing that's very interesting about this show is that most of these episodes are very much focused around technology and how all of it goes wrong. And you can definitely feel that because there are some standout episodes in this show that highlight things like that. One of my absolute favorite episodes, which we did watch. We did actually watch this one during our oh Lord. I apologize, guys. My talking is a little weird there. But we watched this during our watch party as well. And oh my Lord, it is a heated episode here. Now, if you haven't seen this one, I'm trying my best not really to spoil any of this here now. And it's basically about this kid who starts receiving text messages that basically tell him he has to follow all of these instructions, because if he doesn't follow these instructions, they're going to end up releasing this video, which at the time, I don't want to spoil anything, but at the time, what we're led to believe is that this video is of him getting in trouble, getting himself off, masturbating, and that's where we're left at. It's called Shut Up and Dance. And didn't know what to expect with this because the show's talking a lot. The episode talked, I guess, a lot about the dangers of the internet and things we're looking at, and you never know who's watching what you're doing. And just how throughout the course of this episode we're made to empathize or sympathize with our supposed protagonists of this episode, and by the time we find out the twist at the very end, all of that goes out the door, and it's like a punch in the gut because there really is no winners in this at all. And that's one thing that Black Mirror does so well, is that a lot of these episodes harken back to a lot of our really good anthology series. Again, I've mentioned Twilight Zone and Tales from the Crypt and everything. And just like those shows, it doesn't always end on a sour or a bad note. It's not always the absolute worst ending you can think of. But some of these episodes really do end in the absolute worst of ways for some of our characters. And they do manage to keep it relevant with a lot of things as well, too. For example, in the most recent season, some of you might remember, and it's actually the last episode we just got done watching here in our watch party, there was an episode called Rachel, Jack, and Ashley 2 that featured Miley Cyrus as a pop star who doesn't really want to live the life that she's living right now. She still wants to be in the business, but she doesn't want to be this manufactured product that she's been made to be over the course of her career. And it's kind of right on the nose because, again, it's Miley Cyrus playing this lead character, and it harkens very much back to things like Hannah Montana, which, how could you make Hannah Montana scary? How could you make Hannah Montana, such a more straight dramatical thing? And this is how you do that. And a lot of these episodes we can find something in common with, whether it's the USS Callister episode about this software designer that makes a simulation very similar to Star Trek and traps a number of his colleagues inside to live out the simulation with him. Episodes like that. Or whether it's even Bandersnatch, which we watched on a watch party, which is their choose your own adventure type tale about this young man who is working as a game designer, trying to put together the perfect game and everything that comes with that. There are so many good tales in this series to where there is definitely an episode for everyone. So if you're not necessarily looking for something on the horror side, they do have a number of episodes that fall more into like heavy sci-fi, or even more into the terms of like comedy, to where it's more so about like a black comedy over anything else. And that's what's so good about this series, is that all our other anthology tales that we love so much do the same kind of thing. Not always is it about horror. Yeah, in movies, like we watch Creepshow 1 and 2, and all of those tales are definitely about being something scary overall. But in a lot of the TV series instead, we get just a whole bevy of different episodes being featured. Now, the downside of this is that the seasons take a while to come out. The most recent season, which again is actually really only season 3 now that I think about it, or they call it series because it's based, in the UK, and they don't do seasons, they do series. But technically, what they call series 5 came out in 2019, so we're going 2 years at this point. Obviously, the pandemic played a big role in that, because we definitely want to make sure, because they're definitely making sure that these episodes aren't being filmed during that. But now that we're kind of at the tail end of it, we can see that coming back. But this is another really, really great show for folks to get introduced to horror and like kind of more extreme sci-fi and stuff, because you can really pick up any episode and none of them are connected to each other. So you don't have to worry about watching a different episode to get brought in and to actually pick everything up at that point. Really, really good show. All of it's on Netflix. I absolutely recommend checking this one out. Now, Spawn. Todd McFarlane's Spawn. This has been one of my favorite shows for over a couple of decades at this point. I talk a lot about Australia, and I first saw this when I was living in Australia in the mid to late 90s. And I remember, I didn't know anything about Spawn. I was only just getting in the comics between the mid to late 90s at that point, so I knew the name Todd McFarlane, but I never knew what to like kind of attribute him to. Things like Venom and stuff like that. I didn't know that those two things went together. And one of my dad's friends, who was always the one getting us new movies and stuff like that, because in Australia we usually got stuff a little behind everywhere else, and there wasn't exactly the best way to catch new things that were coming out. A friend of my dad's ended up owning the first season of Spawn. And so what happened was that when this show came out, it was released on VHS as one movie. So basically, there's 3 seasons of the show, and each season was released as a movie, whereas it was actually airing as separate episodes on HBO. So I watched the first season and didn't really know what to expect. Spawn's not Batman. He's not Superman. He's not, the X-Men or Captain America or Wolverine or anything like that. Spawn is the story about this former soldier named Al Simmons who was killed. He was betrayed and murdered. And when he went to hell for the life that he lived, he struck a bargain with the devil to basically say that, look, you get to go back. You get to basically see your wife who you left behind. And then after that, guess what? You got to come back and serve us. You are here to serve hell at this point, because we are turning you into what's known as a hell spawn, which is basically a warrior for hell. You get this really bitchin' suit, which Spawn's suit is so bitchin', complete with this really, really bitchin' cape. And then after that, you get all these powers and everything that go along with it as well too. But you have to use those powers, that suit, everything that goes with it to serve hell, so hell can win. And Al Simmons has no interest in serving hell. Al Simmons wants to regain his former life. He wants to regain his humanity. He wants his wife back. But things aren't so simple. Al Simmons has been dead for a while. His wife has remarried. She has a new daughter with her new husband. His boss, who was partly responsible for his death, is still going on in the world of gun trafficking and all these other illegal activities. So when Spawn returns, he realizes the world isn't the same way that he left it as. And not for trying to make the world better, because that's not his intent in the least bit. He doesn't give a shit about that at all. But this brings him into conflict with both heaven and hell. Hell, because they want him to get back to his job and start doing the bidding of hell. And heaven, because hell spawns are the natural enemy of everything that is good and everything that is light, and they want to destroy him just for that. So the question is, can he regain his humanity? Can he do the right thing when so often he's being driven towards doing the wrong thing? This show was, for all intents and purposes, the adult version of Batman the Animated Series. The animation was very much the same as Batman the Animated Series. Episodes were only 30 minutes long. And keep in mind, at that time, Batman the Animated Series was still winning all these awards. It was evolving into all these different shows. It had all these movies out. It was really a cultural phenomenon. So many people wanted to basically play into that and hopefully make some good money off of that, and that's kind of one of the reasons why Spawn came around. And HBO hit it big with this. It stinks that the show didn't last so long, and Todd McFarlane has been talking for over 2 decades now about continuing this show, about getting another season out or rebooting it, and chances are it's not going to happen. Because Todd McFarlane says a lot of that stuff there, but it's all about who's willing to help him finance these things. But it's a fantastic show. We have some great voices in there. Keith David, who is a horror icon. You might remember him from movies like They Live and The Thing, is our title character of Spawn, Al Simmons. Ming-Na Wen, who y'all might know from like Mulan or Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or more recently The Mandalorian, plays one of our lead characters, Jade, as well too. Richard Dysart, who you also might remember from The Thing, plays Cagliostro. So there's a lot of really good cast members to this show, and such good character work. The violence is there, and some of these episodes are definitely on the creepy side too, because some of the villains that Spawn ends up facing off against end up being a bit more on the creepy side. Now, that show is all on HBO Max. You can definitely check it out there. It's absolutely worth watching, just like all the rest of these. Creepshow. So, Creepshow is one of my favorite movie series that was out there. We've had 2 official Creepshow movies. The less we say about the sequel, the better, honestly. But what was so interesting about that was that Creepshow was kind of made to be like the who's who of horror, okay? It was an anthology movie that was created by George Romero, but it was written by Stephen King. And it featured quite a lot of people, name-wise, involved in that first movie. So you had Leslie Nielsen, you had Hal Holbrook, Adrian Barbeau, what's his name? Ted Danson was in the first one as well too. A lot of good stuff, but I am not a fan of the first Creepshow, and I'm very honest about the fact that I don't like it. I thought that the stories were kind of a bit on the boring side, to be completely honest. It didn't do much for me. I enjoy Creepshow 2 way more than I do the first one. And with Creepshow 2, we get one of the best anthology stories ever, The Raft. We've watched that on this as well, too. But the TV series is just basically continuing that idea that the Creep, who is our Crypt Keeper, there are Rod Steiger. They're basically here to tell us the story, and then we get different directors, different writers, different actors, and all of these. Now, The first season, while I did enjoy it, was a pretty weak first season. The stories kind of seemed like they were right there, like they were right on the cusp of being like really, really good, but then they all seem like they're just missing something. This second season, though, has far and wide blown the first season out of the water. It seems that once they got like into their groove with season one, they were able to work out what were the good parts about it and all the things that they needed to improve, because there was definitely a lot with that they needed to step up. And the stories have been much stronger. The only episode I'm really going to mention here, because I don't want to spoil things, is the first episode of season 2, which has two stories that adapt, actually the first Creepshow and Evil Dead. If you remember from the first Creepshow, the wraparound story, which is really talking about the segments in between each of the tales, was about this little kid who his dad was abusive, didn't like him being into all horror stuff and comics and things like that, and ends up buying a voodoo doll that he then goes to embarrass his, not embarrass, but he goes to torture his dad with. And the first story of the second season of Creepshow is about this kid who's super into horror and everything surrounding it, and his aunt and uncle end up moving in, and his uncle doesn't like any of the horror stuff that he's into, and the kid ends up building basically a voodoo doll to terrorize him as well. So the quality of stories in season 2 absolutely stepped up. And the downer to it is that there's only a few episodes. We added season 2 back in here once it started off again here in April. So keep in mind, season 2 only started April 1st, at the beginning of the month. We're still in April right now. And we're down at this point here to episode 5, which is going to be the last episode of the season. It sucks because they're so good, and that's how you know that a show is doing really well, that you're sad that they're already out of episodes and we got to wait a bit for the next season. Now, here's the hope. With the season being done here at the end of April, that maybe they can get our third season out by later this year. I don't think it's likely that that's going to happen. I think we're probably looking for an early debut, just like we did with season 2 here. But we don't know for sure as of yet. We're just hoping that that's what's going to end up happening here with that. And that's all I'm going to say, because Creepshow is so recent. I don't want to talk about it too much here. Our last show that we're going to be discussing is Tales from the Crypt, my all-time favorite TV show. There is not a single TV show that I enjoy more than Tales from the Crypt. And let me tell you, there's so much good about this show that it makes sense why I don't watch or why I don't enjoy anything else more. First of all, it's anthology horror. So every episode you get something new. You don't have to worry about seeing a previous episode because it's a new story every single time. Number 2, The Crypt Keeper. The Crypt Keeper, I feel, is one of the best horror icons ever created in our lifetime. You know, there are some that we're always going to recognize because of how long they've existed and how many different times they've been adapted. So the Universal monsters, we're talking Dracula, the Mummy, the Wolfman, Frankenstein's monster, the creature from the Black Lagoon. All those guys have been adapted over and over and over for the better part of a century at this point. But we've also got other guys like Jason Voorhees, Freddy Krueger, Michael Myers, and so on. The Crypt Keeper is absolutely on the Mount Rushmore of horror because for a lot of people, he was their introduction to horror tales. I mean, a lot of us didn't watch The Twilight Zone when it was initially on. We weren't alive at that point. A lot of us didn't watch the different reboots of shows like that either. But if you were watching TV in the early to mid 90s and you're watching horror, it's pretty impossible that you missed the absolute phenomenon that was Tales from the Crypt. And what's so interesting is that it's not even the first adaptation. A lot of people don't realize that there were actually 2 older Tales from the Crypt movies that came out before the show did and before even the movies that came out in the 90s did too. We had Tales from the Crypt and we had The Vault of Horror. a lot of the tales in those shows were then adapted for the TV show as well too. And across 7 seasons, we get a bit of everything. Vampires, werewolves, zombies, ghouls, witches, serial killers, monsters, robots. We get a bit of everything across this show. This show was so expanding for a lot of people. And you think about the cast that was evolved across a lot of these episodes. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Michael J. Fox, Catherine O'Hara, Daniel Craig, Brad Pitt, Tim Curry. The names just go on and on and on for everybody who is involved in Tales from the Crypt at one point or another. And of course, the show doesn't come without John Kassir, our wonderful, wonderful Crypt Keeper. Tales from the Crypt is really what was responsible amongst so many other things about getting me into horror. I have so many experiences I can think back to from the early to mid 90s surrounding Tales from the Crypt, and it's my favorite movie. Demon Knight has been my absolute favorite movie and favorite horror movie for so long at this point. This show just makes it easy to enjoy what you're watching because there really is a story out there for everyone. But look, y'all, I've been talking way too much. You know how good these shows are. Why are we wasting time? It's time to end this episode and get us over to our watch party. So, I know we're starting a bit late here, but I want y'all to go ahead and head on over to the Facebook page where we have the link up for you to catch the watch party. And of course, you can check out some of our older episodes here in the links that you're seeing on your screen right now. But that is going to do it for us, folks. My name is T. We've been talking scary movies or some scary TV, but you know the difference. Y'all stay scared.